On Friday at 12:01 a.m., I went and I saw uh, Alice in Wonderland, and I thought I would do a quick review of my experience going to see Alice in Wonderland. The very first thing I can say to anybody that goes to see this movie: don't go and see it in 3D. To be quite honest with you, the 3D experience was wasted on the movie. It really didn't come out. It really didn't present itself as an element to enhance the story. The 3D effects, there were a very few that were noticeable. The rest, it was just sort of having these glasses on your face and watching it. So my advice would be, if you get it, if you do go to see it, go see it in a regular 2D format. You're not missing anything. This isn't like Avatar, where it was really enhanced by the 3D effects. The 3D in this movie was very, very minimal at best. And from what I understand, is that it was originally filmed in a 2D format, and then they added the 3D element to it. So it's really not worth it. If you can go, if everybody is crowding to see the 3D version, just go see the 2D version. You'll get less people in the theater and be able to enjoy it better. My overall thoughts on the movie are: I've never actually read the Alice in Wonderland book, Through the Looking Glass, Alice in Wonderland, the Jabberwocky poem, none of that. I'm not very familiar with the Alice in Wonderland world. I am familiar in the sense that I've seen bits and pieces of the Disney version. I've seen remakes where people have referenced Alice in Wonderland. So I have an idea of what the story is about, and I'm familiar with the characters of the story. But the overall idea behind it, I'm not. And the way that Tim Burton went about making this film is apparently it was an amalgamation of the different aspects of the Alice in Wonderland mythos. You've got the Jabberwocky is in there. You've got Alice in Wonderland. You've got Through the Looking Glass. Apparently, he's taken bits and pieces from all these different ones, plus thrown his own flavor in there, and created his own version of that story. So if you are an Alice in Wonderland aficionado or purist, I don't exactly know how you'll respond to this. I don't know, as I said, because I didn't read the story. I don't have an idea of where the differences were, where the key points changed, where the story deviated from the original. So I couldn't tell you as far as that goes. However, some of the choices that Burton made when he made this film, I think, were really cool. As an example, uh, Johnny Depp's version of the Mad Hatter. Now, every time I've ever seen a Mad Hatter, it's always been this kooky, crazy, singy, dancy kind of little guy. Okay? And I've never really thought much of the Mad Hatter other than just a goofy representation. I understand the Mad Hatter is supposed to be crazy, that whole Tea Party represents, these people are out of their mind for whatever reason, and that the insanity that they have, or the madness that they have, is a silly, goofy madness that goes along with the world that they're a part of. Johnny Depp's version of the Mad Hatter I thought was interesting because there was sort of a dent in his brain, the way that he presented it. Yes, he's goofy and yes, he's silly, but there's also, key points where his personality changes, and he goes from, being the goofy, wacky, silly, nutty hatter to this sort of deranged individual. And it's not deranged in the sense like he's skinning cats alive and eating small babies, but it's obvious that there was something else. There was something more to the character. So I like the way that was presented. I really like the way that Burton built Wonderland, made Wonderland look. It had that mystical forest look to it. Sort of I don't want to say high fantasy because that's not correct, but it had a fantasy sort of feel to it, and I think that was important. Um, my overall experience, I enjoyed it. I thought that I was excited to see what was going to happen because, as I said, I've never actually read the Alice in Wonderland books. So I was interested in learning about the story, and for somebody who wasn't familiar, I think that it was a good story. I think that the way that Burton weaved it together, it definitely had that flavor to it. It was a very. I think the soundtrack and the way that the world looked definitely put the Burton-esque flavor to the story itself. Um, Once again, this is not the kind of movie that I would suggest you go see on the matinee. And I think that this movie is safe enough to bring your kids and to go and see. There are darker themes in there, so some parents may not be comfortable with it. But I think that that's important. I think that those kind of stories need to be told. I think that that kind of storytelling, where the world is not a fluffy place, where all the happy elves and fairies dance on fucking flowers and everybody hugs one another. I think that, the reality is that even in those contexts of fantasy and fairy tale, that there is a very dark and realistic aspect to it, where good and bad are clearly defined, and bad is bad enough that it's clear that these are not good things, these are not good people, and that the world is reflective of that. There are parts of it that are dark and foreboding, and there are parts that are light and happy, and that even good people deal with darker subject matter at times. So yeah, I think that all in all, it's not a bad film. Um, I don't know. I'm probably going to have to see it again, and I'd like to be able to see it in an environment where I'm able to study the film a bit more. This is the kind of film I think where there's a lot more to it. I mean, you can enjoy it on a very basic level, a very skin level. Not really very deep. And I think there's an aspect to it where there's that can be more that can be processed, more that can be delved into and looked at. So I'd like to go back and see it, um, and be able to just sort of absorb what's going on instead of watching the story unfold. Now that I've seen what's happening, I'd like to go back and see what else is there to be gleaned from it. So yeah, that's my experience with Alice in Wonderland. I think that you'll enjoy it, and hopefully you will. And like I said, go ahead and avoid the 3D. Even though there are a couple of the previews that they showed, like for example Tron Legacy, which I'm excited about. There's this one called, like, I forget, the Defenders of Endor or something. I know Endor is a Star Wars reference, but it's about these owl warrior things. That was kind of cool. A couple of the previews that they showed were pretty nifty in the 3D, but watching the movie itself in 3D is really not necessary. So that's my take on it. I hope you all have a good day, and I'll talk to you later.